What is good, Tsla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I'm going to be breaking down what's going on with Nvidia, Tesla, SPY, the QQQ, and many tickers out there. I'm going to talk about Nvidia's earnings and why this is very important for all Tesla investors to know about and how this could affect the market for tomorrow because something new is developing on the charts. But before I break anything down about what's going on with Nvidia, before I talk about how this could affect Tesla and what the news is saying about Tesla simultaneously, let me just mention three things real quick. I am personally not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire community as a whole. And finally, guys, I just wanted to mention that for tonight, I'm going to be going to an airport to pick someone up. It's going to be someone in my family. And it's going to be very, very late at night. So by the time I leave, it'll be late. And by the time I come home, it may be like 1 or 2 in the morning. And the stock market is going to open at 6:30 a.m. for me. So I might not be available tomorrow to record a pre-market update video, but I should be back during the afternoon. And then after that, everything is going to go back to normal based off my previous schedule. So just as a reminder, there might not be a morning update video tomorrow. If you don't see a video from me during the pre-market, do not panic. I'm going to be fine. It's just because I might be sleeping very, very late. So that's going to be it for tomorrow. I will be back basically during the afternoon. And with that said, I'm also recording this video very late because I was waiting for Nvidia's earnings to end, and this took a very, very long time. It really just dragged on. And now that it just finished, I want to talk about the charts and what's going on with the markets and how this could affect Tesla. So I want to note that it's very important I go over Nvidia because Nvidia is affecting the whole market, including Tesla. And we're starting to see this thing drop during the after hours after earnings came out. So what happened to Nvidia? Why is it dropping? I just want to remind you all that Nvidia is not necessarily down big because this thing has been pumping and pumping and pumping like crazy for the last couple of weeks. Remember, at the very end of October, this thing was at $392 a share. Then this thing managed to hit $509 a share during the pre-market today, which is I'm not the pre-market, sorry, the after hours today. It hit 509 before it started to sell off. So it still ran like crazy as we approached this earnings. But what happened to Nvidia? Why is it selling off? The answer is, as this thing was pumping and pumping and pumping, investors either knew or were at least expecting a very, very strong earnings report. And they basically started to price everything in as this thing just continued to pump. So this is similar to like a buy the rumor, sell the news event. Maybe not exactly, but very similar to one where Nvidia just pumped approaching earnings and just started dropping, even though it had very strong earnings, in my opinion, because investors were not just absolutely blown away because they were expecting Nvidia to beat and do as well as it did, and they ended up just pricing everything in as this thing just pumped. This thing is starting to sell off, and I think that there's going to be more downside moving forward. So how did earnings go? The answer is not bad whatsoever. So earnings per share was a nice beat. They beat on that. Revenue was a very nice beat at 18.12 billion. Revenue grew 206% year over year during the quarter ending for October 29th. And net income reached $9.24 billion, which is very, very good for them. We also saw their data center revenue going up about by 279%, which is even more great news for them. So they beat on their earnings overall. Very, very good stuff from them. When it comes to guidance, it was not bad whatsoever. Their gross margins were up to about 74%, which is a nice increase compared to the previous quarter. Revenue was up 34%. Operating margins were not bad. Everything was quite good for them. Guidance was also quite strong for EPS and revenue reaching $20 billion. Once again, great start for Nvidia. Now their the cost of revenue was, I think, a slight increase, but it wasn't that bad. Operating expenses were just like very similar to before. Other than that, their expenses were not too bad, and they had relatively good amounts of guidance. And I think that it was a pretty good earnings. But one of the things that many of the team members mentioned were some of the hardships that could be affecting them, which is why they could have raised their revenue by even more. They raised a little bit less than what maybe some investors wanted, but other than that, still not too bad. It was still a beat. They still raised their guidance, so it still was good. Nothing was truly bad. It's just that investors already like priced a lot of this in, and it's already starting to drop. Now, for data affecting the markets, as a reminder, an hour before the market opens tomorrow, we have initial jobless claims coming out. Then at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the Michigan Consumer Sentiment Report, the 5-year inflationary expectations report coming out, and then more data from Michigan. And then besides that, the last piece of data will be the bill auction at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. This could cause some volatility, but it shouldn't be too bad whatsoever. All right. I also want to remind you all that tomorrow is Wednesday, November 22nd. That's important because Thursday is going to be Thanksgiving. The stock market is going to be closed. Wednesday, which is tomorrow, is going to be the last full trading day we get before the Thanksgiving holiday. So typically on days like this, you see some profit taking, some low volume, sideways price action. We might see some selling, a mix of selling and some sideways price action tomorrow, maybe some chop here and there. But I think there might be a bit of selling because of how Nvidia ended up moving and how it's moving right now. So I think that that's going to affect us. So make sure you're prepared for that just to be safe. As far as Tesla goes, I saw some new updates. Tesla rolls out a congestion pricing ahead of the holiday travel season. It says it's going to charge drivers an additional $1 per minute to juice their EV batteries beyond 90%. This is once again going to help them get a little bit more money. And once again, they're trying to just de-incentivize more congestion at these like charging stations. So that's just part of their plan. There's a lot of news coming out just recently about the Gigafactory for Austin. There's a lot of concerns about worker safety that have been arising. Some things are questionable, but other things do seem to have a lot of like truth behind them based off reports, as a lot of workers have been injured. A lot of them have gotten hurt. Elon Musk mentioned that this is one of the reasons why they're developing Optimus to help do more unsafe tasks, to replace more employees for those. But for now, I mean, the truth is the truth. There are going to be injuries that happen. Tesla's a very demanding job, and things like this will happen. So Tesla and the team are working, and I believe that they're going to do a better job. And now that these reports are coming out to just improve worker safety, I think that there may be more work that has to be done. But I just want to note that because of all these reports that are coming out, especially because of the fact that it's making so much noise right now, I think that this could lead to something that's a little negative for Tesla. We're seeing some negative news, and this could be a little bit bad for them. I mean, as long as we don't see, anything else that kind of like expands from this, we don't see like, even more negative reports or something else that builds up from this. I mean, it might cause a slight sell-off for Tesla. It shouldn't be that bad. But we'll have to wait and see tomorrow morning if there are any other new pieces of news. So make sure before the market opens, I would recommend just looking at news for Tesla just in case something new comes out. As of right now, the news and the technicals are favoring the downside just a little bit more because Nvidia is continuing to sink at the time I'm speaking. Nvidia is down to 490 right now. It's not really sinking too hard because implied volatility was high and many investors would need a much bigger move to make money. And Wall Street and the market were expecting a very big move. We were expecting a 40 plus point move apparently. They were trying to get in lots of people to buy premiums. And now what the market makers are doing is they're making the move a very small little sell off to start off. But I think there's going to be more selling coming as time goes on. So why do I say that? There are many reasons. We're going to start off with Nvidia, then talk about Tesla. I'm only going to go over 5 tickers in this video just to make it quick because it's very late and I started very late as this earnings call just continued to go on. So for Nvidia, this is like a quadruple bearish divergence or a triple bearish divergence. Let me just double check it. I think it looks like a quadruple bearish divergence. Once we went all the way up to about 509, the RSI was continuing to decline, so was our MACD. On top of that, when you look at the daily time frame, you can see that Nvidia has the 20 EMA support at 470. So there's a good chance we're going to be heading down there, very close to that level over the next couple of weeks. Now, tomorrow specifically does not have to be like the biggest red day ever, but I think that there's going to be a risk of downside looking at the current chart and looking at the fact that despite all the good news that came out, it still is selling off as the market priced that in, and there's going to be more risk for that. So technicals suggested some downside. Here are some levels to watch for. For resistance, we have 495, but we're actually currently just barely holding 490. If we lose this, watch 488. Then we have 485, 482, then 480 flats to 479. Then there's 475 below that. These are just some levels. I think that it's going to make its way back down towards 470 over the next couple of weeks. For tomorrow specifically, we could be watching for at least 485 to be tested, if not even lower than that. But I still anticipate more downside for Nvidia, and I think that this is going to contribute to more downside in the markets. This is going to add to more selling pressure for Tesla. We also had some negative news involving the next Gigafactory, Giga Austin. So we'll be watching this very carefully. As far as Tesla goes, we look bullish overall. The overall chart is still bullish. We're still on a nice uptrend. but that does not mean we can't decline a bit more for tomorrow because of Nvidia. So we might see Tesla continue to slow down. I don't know if we're forming some kind of flag right here. I'm going to be watching this very carefully, going into tomorrow. And on top of this, we're going to be watching this blue trend line, which is going to be acting as our support. So we have this like channel that's forming. We're basically going to be heading towards the support right here, most likely. So we might see this thing break below 240 and retest 238. And we'll be watching to see if Tesla re-enters this wedge right here, or if Tesla fails to do so. So I think there's going to be a slight retracement on Tesla. We might see it retrace a bit thanks to Nvidia. Watch 238 as support. This is based off technicals and based off what we're seeing right now. But don't forget, there's an external factor affecting Tesla, and that's going to be the news if something else comes out tomorrow morning. Right now, it looks a bit more bearish. We might see it just downtrend and approach 238. Watch and see if it holds where our blue trend line happens to be. If Tesla fails to bounce off of this, we're going to be sinking back down to 235. If we bounce off of this, we could try to make our way back up to 240. But I think it's going to test 238. If it fails there, we're going to be watching for more downside towards 235. And the risk of the downside is still there because of the market and the shift in the algos. On top of that, when it comes to SPY, I think that SPY might see a bit more downside. There's going to be a risk of it testing 452. And if we end up closing below that, if we break below that, there's going to be more downside. We had a very nice setup. So basically, we've been uptrending above the blue trend line for quite some time. So you guys can see we have this blue trend line on the bottom. This was our support. And what happened was, when you zoom into the chart, we broke out, we rejected off 455. One thing I warned everyone about was 455 to 457 is where we have some tight resistance. Then we rejected. We came down, we broke below the blue trend line of support, which was a bearish signal. We came back up today to backtest, and we failed to break and close above it. We just got rejected again. So we had a very beautiful backtest of this trend line. We got rejected, and now it's looking weaker. So if we lose 452, I would turn more bearish. I think there's a risk of that happening because of Nvidia. And I think that we might see some downside and lots of choppy price action too. So maybe it's not going to be a very aggressive sell-off to start us off. We might see the market just respect the downtrend, but I'm thinking that we're going to see more aggressive selling. I don't really want to use the word aggressive. I would say like more intense selling. I would say it's going to become exemplified a little bit more as time goes on. But for tomorrow specifically, we're likely not going to see the market just like straight up crash. It's going to be a little bit choppy as it's going to be right before the weekend. But there's going to be some downside still coming. So I just wanted to warn you about that. If we lose 452, watch this thing start coming down towards 451.5. If that fails, let's watch 451. I think that this thing is going to start sinking soon. I think that there's a risk to the downside. Like I mentioned in the morning, I was calling this out in the morning. If you look at SPX basically, and you go to like the weekly time frame, you're going to notice that right here, we have a tendency of testing this white trend line acting as our resistance. We tested right here, right? We got this rejection, got a back test back in July, rejected on the weekly, came back. We just touched the trend line yesterday, and we might reject from here. I told you all if we broke this, we would be very bullish. If we rejected, we'd start to see the market sell off. And what do you think the market's going to do? Well, so far with Nvidia, announcing earnings and still selling off, there's going to be a risk of this rejecting again and seeing a slight sell-off. But even if we reject, it does not mean the market is done. The market could still rally for December. We might just get a very temporary pullback approaching that rally. I just wanted to warn you about that. Finally, for the QQQ, same setup as SPY. I'm going to go back to the hourly time frame. Let me just pull up the 1 hour chart right here. So on the hourly time frame on the QQQ, what's basically happening is this. We basically had something very similar as SPY, where this thing basically was respecting this yellow support trend line. I'm going to change the color so it's easy to like identify. I'm going to make this like purple instead or something. Maybe just blue. I think that would be better. So we were respecting this blue trend line going up and up and up and up. Then what happened was we got the breakouts thanks to Nvidia approaching earnings with lots of excitement. Then we got this rejection. We broke below this. We got a back test today. See how it back tested this blue trend line, and we rejected again, which is another bearish signal. We have a possible looking. This could be like a slanted head and shoulders. I wouldn't count this as a head and shoulders, but kind of like an inverse cup and handle that could lead to more downside later on thanks to Nvidia. And on top of that, I just want to call out that just like Nvidia, right? We had the bearish divergence. We also had a bearish divergence on the QQQ developing. I wasn't sure if this would play out, but I told you all just to wait and see what Nvidia does if we get confirmation. We're getting some confirmation now. This thing is down about 0.2% in the after hours. There might be a risk of downside thanks to this, so watch that very carefully. To add on to this, last but not least, we have Apple. Apple's looking a bit weaker. We're going to be watching support around 190. If that fails, watch 190.5. I just want to note that we have a quadruple bearish divergence on Apple, and with Nvidia potentially selling off, this could contribute to Apple selling. And we're going to be watching the news for Apple to see if anything develops that leads to more downside. So watch 191 as resistance on Apple. Don't forget about this other resistance right here at 190.5. Then we have support at 190. If that fails us, watch 189.5. And if that fails us, watch this come down to 189. We also have a potential, possible kind of like head and shoulders developing on Apple. This could be like a left shoulder here. This could be our head, and then a right shoulder could be forming. That's just one possibility. I know it looks very sloppy, but it still has a very similar setup as I would say like SPY in the QQQ. Right, we had this trend line of support. We failed to get the back test. We came just short before we're coming back down. So with the divergence that's looking bearish, with Nvidia selling off, this could contribute to Apple selling off. We'll be watching the news just to be safe. News is going to be very important. We're gonna likely see this thing shop a bit, and we're going to be testing 190 to see if this holds. If we lose 190 and close below it, that's going to be a bearish signal for more downside. And there's going to be a risk of this coming down to 185 over the next, I would say, 1.5 to 2 weeks. All right, so I'm leaning a bit more bearish for the markets. I think we might see a sell-off thanks to Nvidia. I think that may affect Tesla. The news coming out today was good in the morning about when it came to like the Chinese registrations being up about, I believe it was like 20 something percent, like 28% or something relative to the last weekly registrations report, which is good for Tesla. So we're getting some good sales in China for Tesla, which is good. We also got some good news from an executive saying that 10 Tesla Cybertrucks should be delivered, which is good for Tesla, which is why Tesla popped today. But as time went on, Tesla began to slow down. And now we have Nvidia that's going to act as an anchor for Tesla. We have the market acting as an anchor potentially. And if we continue to get bad news, Tesla could sell off. There might be a bit more selling coming as I showed you guys the chart on Tesla. But don't forget to watch the news tomorrow morning just for extra safety because that's another factor that's going to affect it. But as of right now, it's looking bearish. It looks like it might sell off a bit more. Could we be forming a flag here for an eventual pop later on? It is possible, but right now we're looking bearish, and I think it might sink a little bit more. We might see this thing lose 240 and just backtest this blue trend line. So watch and see if Tesla bounces off this or not. If it bounces, it could push back up. If it fails, it's going to start sinking. So there might be a bit more downside coming. So watch that, and don't forget to watch the news tomorrow morning. All right, that's it for this one. Once again, guys, I'm going to be unavailable for tomorrow, most likely during the pre-market session. I can't promise anything, though. We'll see if I'm available or not. I most likely will not be. And then I will see you guys most likely tomorrow during the afternoon. So take care, watch the news, watch your levels, and be very patient in the market like this. Know there's going to be some selling likely and also some chop. So be very careful. The market's going to be very tricky. And it's going to be the last day before the Thanksgiving weekend starts, the last trading day before that. So take care, do what you have to do, and I'll see you guys very soon. Tesla to the moon because the long term is still very bright for Tesla despite the short term pressures right now and some negative news we're seeing. And peace out.